So we're here now. We're joined by Ro Hume. Thank you, Ro, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Ro is an incumbent school director, so you're running for re-election for the first time. Is that right?
That's correct. This is
Okay.
my first re-election campaign.
All right. And she is also cross-filed on both the Republican and the Democratic tickets. So anybody in either party will be able to vote for her on May 16th. So we're going to get right into the questions. The first question is the one that makes the world go round, and that's money. So the question to you is, equitable funding from the state continues to be an issue. Please share your knowledge of the issue and describe how you can impact this as a school director.
Well, I think this is the crux of all of the issues in the district. So many issues we could have resolved if we got adequate funding from the state. I prefer to use the term equity rather than equitable, because to just give every school student in Pennsylvania the same amount would not resolve the issues in districts like ours, where we have a high proportion of disadvantaged students. We get, the last count, somewhere about $4,300 per student from the state, in the state portion of our funding, and the state funding makes up 38% of our budget. Many states in the union, the state funding for education is way higher than that. I think we're the lowest or the second lowest state portion of funding. That means that we have to make up that shortfall in funding through taxes, and that's really unfair to the taxpayer because we're an impoverished city and they are having to bear too heavy a burden. There are districts in the state that get $9,000 a student, comparable districts to us, like York. Then we really hope that the recent ruling in the funding case trickles down to mean more dollars per student for our students in the Scranton School District, but also for disadvantaged students across the state. We didn't see an immediate major raise in the budget that Governor Shapiro has proposed to the level that we were all hoping for. And I think it will take some years for that funding to come down. But the ruling that the state is unconstitutional in denying funding to school districts to provide excellent education is a great benchmark. We get, the amount of money we get from the state in our basic education funding grant and our special education funding grant keeps us running. But it's estimated that we're underfunded desperately.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So the second question is equally important, and that one is on the topic of safety. What is the role the school board plays in ensuring the safety of our children?
I believe we have a responsibility within our walls to keep these children incredibly safe. They cannot learn if they're not in a safe environment. There are two threats to safety. There's internal threats that come from dismay amongst our own students and into fights between them and things. And we have a responsibility to make sure that every student and every teacher and every visitor and everybody who enters our buildings is not in a position to cause harm, physical harm or emotional or mental harm to our students. The second range of threats and security come from outside, and we have, tragically, given the light of the recent events, an incredible need to make sure that our buildings are safe for our students and they can learn with security. And by security, I don't only mean physical security, I mean freedom from fear. They cannot be in environments where they're afraid. So we have invested in this last period. We have created the position of Director of Safety and Security, and we have an extraordinarily capable person filling that role. We have invested in equipment at our high schools and our middle schools to some extent to improve the security against external threats and internal threats. We will continue to work on this because our job is to make school a safe place for our teachers, for our students, for everyone. And I believe that we're looking at the moment at some security upgrades. But what we cannot do is scare our children into being so nervous about where they are and what they're doing that they cannot learn, because that is our main job, teaching kids.
Okay, thank you. This next one is a two-part question, okay? Closing a school, as you know, is a hard decision to make. So the first part of the question is, what factors should be considered when you have to vote on a school closure? And the second part of that is, what factors should not be considered when you're voting on a school closure?
Okay. The major factors that need to be considered when you vote on a school closure, I think that word is a little loaded, because essentially closing a physical building is not actually closing a school, because the school to me is not the building that they're in. But the factors that have to be considered are, how much capacity do we have as a district, or any district have, for the number of students it has? What are the projections for enrolment over the next decade? We have to consider the students of today, the students of 10 years from now, and the students of 20 years from now, to make sure that every student in our district has access to buildings and facilities that are fit for 21st century education. Obviously, if we have a lot of buildings with low capacity, we may be better off focusing on improving or building new buildings that are 21st century fit, to make sure that every child has an equitable access to really good standards. It upsets me that some of our students are learning in buildings that were built this century, and some of our elementary students are learning in buildings that weren't built not in the 20th century, but in the 19th century. Our oldest building was built in 1895. So what we need to do is take an overall look, both for now and the future, and make sure that the facilities we can provide to our students are fit for purpose, equitable, and every child has the chance to learn in a modern, well-equipped environment. And our teachers have access to the things they need. What I don't think should be considered completely is dollars and cents. We're not in the business of saving money, except insofar as we cannot be wasteful with money. We cannot spend large amounts of money repairing a large number of buildings if those buildings are only going to be filled to 50% capacity. And I believe that we need to look at a large number of factors, including community input.
There are lots of questions that come up about transportation. And by transportation, I just mean getting the kids back and forth to school. That's
Absolutely.
it. And again, a two-part question. Discuss any changes that you believe are needed to the district's policies on transportation for students. And then again, what factors need to be considered when you're voting for change pertaining to transportation?
I think that one of the thorniest issues we have is the policy that says if you live within 1.5 miles of an elementary school, we do not provide transportation. But if you live on the other side of the street, we do. And that goes out to 2 miles for high school students. Now, we do have a program in the high schools, and we work very well to try and provide bus passes on colts. We did look at providing yellow bus transportation, but the subsidised transportation available on colts is working well. The issue comes back again to the issue of funding. Our transportation costs eat up quite a lot of our budget. And to make a change to bring that policy in to, say, 1 mile is not sustainable under the amount of money we have in our budgets. We have demands. We want to get the duty period back in the middle school. That's a sustainable cost over many years that we can't just write a cheque for. Money we spend on changing our transportation policy takes away funding from our educational ability, our staffing, the programs we can offer. If I had the druthers, I would love to have a yellow bus pull up outside every corner of every street in Scranton, but we have such pressing needs in so many other ways. But transportation is one of those real dilemmas for any school board. We have had the benefit, and we will benefit from our transportation company getting electric buses. That's great. We're not a huge geographic area, so we have to weigh the checks and balances of where do we put our money that is best for the kids.
Okay, thank you. This next question, Ro, the general topic overall is banning something, okay? And again, a two-part question. So what should go into, yes, yes. So Ro, the general topic for this question is banning something. And again, it's a two-part question. What should go into a process or a decision if a call to ban books or critical race theory or banning anything should float before the school board from any direction, wherever that might come from? And then are these decisions up to the board?
All right. Well, first of all, I'm fairly obviously a child of the 60s. So banning things does not sit well with me. I was out there banning banners to ban the Vietnam War. I believe that the role of the board is to allow the district to provide education for children that is based on a grasp of reading, writing, letters. CRT doesn't come up. We've got K-2, let's teach them how to read, let's get them educated. Banning books, I believe that every parent has the right to decide what book their child should or shouldn't read. And I believe that we should be in a process of, if a parent says that their child should not read this particular book, then we need to have a system in place and a policy in place to accommodate that. I don't believe that any parent has the right to decide what another parent's child should read. I don't believe that restricting access to information of any kind aids the children that we are educating in their ability to get a view of the world which accommodates the great diversity of people and views and situations in the world. The narrower you make the education in a school district, the more trouble our students have when they confront the real world. I don't believe it's the role of the school board to ban anything, except unless there is something that egregiously, obviously is offensive that a whole large number of people want to do, we should look at it. But our job as a board is to set a policy of education that allows the greatest freedom to our district to work on developing the day-to-day curricula that give our children a good education.
Okay, thank you. Ro, I have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
This one has a bit of an intro, and then the question at the end, okay?
Okay.
So per legislation that was passed in April of 2022, the Pennsylvania Department of Education must integrate culturally relevant and sustaining education competencies into educator, teacher, preparation, induction, and continuing professional development programs no later than the 23-24 academic year. And there are 9 competencies, and I'm not going to read them all because they have really long names, but it's like cultural competency, differentiated opportunities, culturally relevant learning, and things about microaggressions. Things like that is what's covered under this legislation. So 2 questions. What impact do you think that this legislation does or will have, both on our teachers and our students? And what role will the school board play in ensuring compliance with the state law?
Okay, well, I think this is one of those laws that is very specifically sent out, and it basically means be kind to other people, learn about the fact that your students may come from different backgrounds, and be prepared to tolerate the fact that not everybody thinks the way you do, is my understanding of this. And I think that is a great idea. I think that just to digress a moment, I would love to see a district like ours, which has such enormous diversity. We're a minority-majority district. I would love to see our staff reflect that balance. It doesn't, not for lack of effort in trying to recruit people. It comes down to, I think, be kind, see how different people are. To some extent that can be trained, to some extent it can't be trained. We're blessed with teachers who are, for the main, kind, compassionate, passionate educators. In our district, the professional development role is shared with the Scranton Federation of Teachers and our administrations together, and our professional development days have enormous amounts of mandated material to cover. I hope this gets covered. I hope that the concept really flows through. Our job as a board is to oversee and make sure that this is being implemented to the best possible ability of the district and the administration. How we would comply with making sure it was done, I have not thought about that because I don't think it, but I think that what we normally do as a board is we look at the big picture. If we saw a pattern of this, we would want to talk to the administration and get a process in place to discuss it as to how it could be better implemented. On individual cases, that's up to the administration.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, that ends the questions that I have for you, but you have 2 minutes to address the voters and share anything about your campaign or your platform or anything we haven't covered.
Well, thank you very much. I think that this is a choice moment, or perhaps more aptly, a moment of choice for Scranton. There are 5 women who are currently serving on the board running for re-election. I work with them all. We are passionate. We are a great team. 5 strong, very dedicated women. And I think that we make a good team, and I would love to see the team continue to work together. If people feel they must choose between members of the team, I hope that they will choose to vote for me among their choices. I think that the choice that Scranton faces is to look to the past and elect people who were part of the issues and led to the issues that got us into financial recovery. I think I represent a path to continue on the progress we've made. In the last session of this board, we have got the district out of recovery, which is an amazing feat. We have done that as best we could. But the job's not over yet, and I would really ask people for their vote, not because I find that it's for my ego, but because I really believe that there is still work to do and I still have a contribution that I can make to that work. We got the district out of recovery. We have spent $100 million on revitalising some of our buildings, and we're going to spend more money in the next capital plan. We've enhanced our security measures. We've put social and emotional well-being right in the middle. I think that when something is working well as a team, it's not a great idea to change it abruptly. I believe where there is still work to do, I would be honoured and humbled to have the chance to continue working on the Scranton School Board, and I ask people for their support.
Thanks so much for your time today, Ro. So that concludes our time with Ro Hume. She is an incumbent Scranton school director running for re-election, and she is cross-filed on both the Republican and the Democratic tickets, so people in both parties will be able to cast their votes for her on May 16th. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.